Hey guys, welcome back to the Danger Planet. Today we're going to do an artist spotlight on haunted hobbies. I'm here with Brandon
Oh, hey.
and Haunted himself.
Hi there.
Haunted, why don't you say hello to the folks and give them a little bit of background on kind of your artistic background, what led you into the hobby as a creative, and kind of what your channel's all about.
Hey there, folks. Well, let's see here. I don't have much of a background in art. I'm self-taught. What I got into the hobby kind of late start, like tabletop gaming in general. I was very late to the to the ball game. I was hanging out with a friend, like the very end of 2012, and I happened to notice this little miniature on their shelf, and it had a rainbow-colored mohawk. And I
Nice.
was like, oh, I'm drawn to this. I go over there and I look at it, and it's wearing armor, and it's got this guitar that has like a gun underslung it. And I'm like, what? Wait, what is this? What is this cool thing that I'm looking at here? And they went into, my friend started telling me about the lore of Chaos and Slanesh and Warhammer 40K. And I was like, this is the coolest thing ever. I must have this. So
Nice.
the very next week, and this is something it's kind of a short falling of mine. I don't go into anything halfsies. I go in all the way. So the very next week, I had 1,500 points of Slaneshi themed chaos sitting on the table.
It's
Okay?
7 days. It's 7 days.
7
you have
days.
1,500 points of Slanesh.
Wild.
Man, that's awesome. That's so awesome.
I don't play around.
That's awesome, man. You'd never seen the hobby. You're like, this is for me. I made the business
Yes.
decision. We're doing it. That's
We're
great.
doing this all the way in. Just dive. dive.
I feel that too, because I remember very vividly the first Warhammer model I ever saw, and it was the really old school Warhammer 40,000 Orc Warrior that looked like his arm was in an L holding up the axe, and it came in the starter box, and it was with the 40 Gretchen that all looked the same, and the 20 Orcs that all looked the same, and the paper Orc Dreadnought.
Oh wow, that's some dating there with the paper.
Yeah, I remember it explicitly too. It's also really funny that you said you don't have any really formal artistic training, which is, I hear that from a lot of people who become relatively proficient artists, where they're like, I really just thought this was cool, and either I'm self-taught or I went through YouTube University really aggressively, and I think that's really cool because it shows an evolution of our hobby where, like, maybe 20 years ago, the only way that you could get painting tips was like out of a white dwarf. You couldn't you couldn't YouTube products. You couldn't go on Reddit and like look up techniques. But how about you? I mean, if you don't have an artistic background, how did you learn to do the things you're doing today?
Well, I did just that. I mean, a lot of it when I first started, when I first sat down, I winged it. I got some paints that looked right and went into it, and they look kind of plain. I was like, okay, so what can I do to make this pop? How am I supposed to get this thing looking like those in the magazine? And I asked a couple friends, and they said, well, take a look at YouTube. I was like, okay. So we go to YouTube and we start looking at some videos, and I see, recess shading and edge highlighting. I'm like, oh, okay, this makes sense. I can do this. I'm also extremely cheap. Despite being that going all the way thing, I spend as little money on supplies as I can. So I make my own washes using a drop of Dawn dishwater, dish soap, and distilled water and some black paint. This was back in the day. I no longer do that so much.
Oh,
anymore,
okay, got it.
But if I were to do it, my primary line of paints is Vallejo model color. I do a good bit of it and a good bit of Scale 75 and a smattering of GW.
I have a Scale 75 paint line right in front of me tonight. I'm about to paint some Night Lords with it right after we get off the phone here.
It's a fantastic paint line. I absolutely love Scale 75. I'm probably going to eventually switch over to it once I get enough of them.
There's a lot of people that don't like the gel medium side of it because I think it's just a
It
different painting experience. But I
it
found
does
that
take a little getting used to, yeah, but it's fine.
yeah, I like watering it down. I think they make really good, really, really high pigmented glaze layers that I really enjoy.
And
So
the matte finish, that
yeah,
is the
really nice.
key. I absolutely love that. You get so many of these others that have this glossy finish, and when you have a gloss, it tends to fool your brain into thinking you're done because you see highlights there that aren't there because of the glossiness.
Yeah, it catches
Um,
light where it's
mm,
like artificially catching light on the model,
yes,
basically.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly, and that's just it can cause problems. So I like the matte finish a lot.
So, I mean, you've painted probably just about every dang different type of model that Malifaux has to offer, right? Um, and one of the things that I always pitch to people about the strength of Malifaux is such a wide variety of masters and models and machines and organic things. I mean, what is your favorite either keyword or type of model or master? What do you love? I mean, you painted it all. What's your favorite?
Well, I wouldn't say I've painted it all. I've painted a lot of it. I have painted almost the entire Kim Thunders faction
Nice.
for a single client, and working my way through Explorers now for another.
I
Um,
saw your
God,
Hinamatsu. Your Hinamatsu looked crazy cool.
Yeah, she was
Uh,
gorgeous.
thank you.
A lot of your Ten Thunder stuff is really, really good. Like all of the Oni, all of like sort of the lighting effects, they all look
Appreciate it.
gorgeous.
The
yeah.
Joraguma were fun because they're actually based on a real fighter. You know, the Golden Orb Weaver Joraguma that's come to Georgia. Um, they were boated over from Asia because they're an Asian spider, and they're wind catchers. They throw a little web up in the air, they catch a wind current, and they fly.
Oh my god, giant
They've
flying
all ended up here
spiders.
in Northeast Georgia.
Yeah. That's the golden red ones that you painted with like the big gold
Uh-huh.
like yellow and red carapaces.
The yellow
Wild.
and red back end. Now, that design is actually on their bellies, but because I wanted it to be seen, I put it on the back of the abdomens of the Joraguma. And I don't know if you noticed, but I actually smoothed the ribs out of those. They're ribbed normally, and they're actually smooth because I put some filler in there and sanded them down.
That
Oh.
that's like really cool attention to detail. Do you find yourself taking inspiration for your paint jobs from like real world examples of like creatures or animals often?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
I
Um, like that was a fine example there. I've looked at a I can't remember the name of the beetle, but that's what I'm using for the night silk creeper for
Oh yeah, that
Cadmus
makes sense. Yeah,
because
like
it's
a
got an
shiny
iridescent
beetle thing.
shell. Yes, an
Yeah.
iridescent shell. So I'm going to try and emulate that in paint.
Ooh,
And getting
what's
back
your
to your question,
iridescent? What's your iridescent plan? I would love to know that. I do a lot of nonsense.
I will let you know when I come up with it.
Wild, yeah.
Really, it's just there's layers of green, blue, fades to orange and red and yellow, and it's just a matter of getting it down to where it looks believable. And it's going to be an experiment for me. I've never done anything like that. I will probably use the airbrush at
Yeah.
least on the Night Silk Creeper for Nexus herself. I'll have to brush it
So
So
you're
mostly.
effectively you're gonna do non-iridescent.
Yeah, not non-metallic, non-iridescent.
Oh
Yeah.
my god.
yeah, it's gonna be crazy.
It's gonna be the new non-metal metal. I
So
swear.
Yeah.
Brandon is notorious at our game store for being the master of glazing and applying various types of color shift paint to his Neverborn. So
Oh,
his
nice.
Neverborn are all different shades and colors and varieties of color shift. And like the craziest
Interesting.
one he did is the Ice Daddy Euripides. His Euripides crew literally looks like the Northern Lights because
Yeah.
all of like the fire elements are like this crazy green, and then all the skin is that color shift iridescent layered upon one another. It
Yeah.
looks wild.
Ah,
Yeah,
okay, very cool.
yeah, I used like a cheap iridescent paint like as the final like highlight layer and just did like really aggressive line highlights on all of the like edges and stuff, and it makes them pop in a very eerie, creepy way.
It's definitely my
I'll
favorite
have to
crazy nonsense
I'll
crew that he
take
has.
a look at those. Send me some
Yeah,
pictures when we're done.
yeah, we'll send you some. They
Will
look
do.
really cool.
Bayou is my favorite.
Yeah.
Um, because and I've only just recently gotten into them, but they have so much character and they're so silly, and they
Yeah.
just make me smile when I'm sitting there looking at them painting them.
I saw
And so
your wrestler bases when I
Yeah,
think I thought
those
that
look
those were
wild.
Rumble Slam bases. I was like, is he painting Rumble Slam? And then you're like, no, man, I'm painting the wrestlers. And I was like, oh, that makes way more sense.
mhm. Yeah, those little wrestling bases are great. They take a little bit of time to do, but I think they're going to work out.
Oh, they look so cool, dude. They
Yeah,
look so cool.
yeah,
We'll post if you have the WIP pictures, we'll post them up here so folks can see them. But he
Uh,
basically scratch built the
yeah.
corners of a wrestling ring for each of his wrestlers, and it looks really, really, really cool.
Is the wire
Thank you.
like bass guitar string? Is that what you used for, or is it just hobby
Uh,
wire?
it's just plain old like hobby wire. I actually it's stuff that I bought at Hobby Lobby, I think, in the earring section, like where
Oh.
you make wire jewelry.
Oh yeah, oh
Um,
yeah. No, seeing the bigger close-up image of it, yeah, for sure. That's
yeah,
wild. Those look
yeah.
so realistic. It's crazy.
Yeah, those are gonna look
Oh
awesome
man.
when they're done. And I thought about what you said too as well. You're like, I try to save money on different types of products. I think
Mhm,
one of the good places to go shopping for hobby supplies is like a
mhm.
Michaels or a Hobby
Oh yeah,
Lobby. And
yeah.
because you can get like if you just go to like a GW store, for example, or whatever, and this is probably the
Mhm,
biggest difference. So I'm just taking like, the two biggest ranges. Go to a GW store, pay like, whatever it is, 450 for a tiny little pot. Go to a Michaels, it's just acrylic paint. Like, as long as the acrylic paint, in my opinion, is relatively good enough, you hit kind of a
mhm,
point of diminishing returns. And unless you're like really, really, really care, I feel like a lot of those like Gildan arts, those Gildan high opacity, high pigment paints that you can get like 4 times as much for the same cost, or like
okay.
or like some synthetic brush packs like that. I've always told folks that are just starting out that that's a good way to check it. Obviously, as your hobby journey goes and you grow, you're probably gonna, kind of go towards maybe like the scale 75s or the like a Winsor and Newton brush or something like that. But I always
Right.
encourage folks at the early stages to kind of go check those places out for good and cheap deals.
Yeah, that's not a bad idea. I did not do that. I kind of did. I got an Army Painter Super Mega Pack or whatever it was. It had like I don't know 65 or
Yeah, yeah, and it comes
85
with the brush
colors
set and
in it.
stuff like that. I got my
It
friend
didn't
that
come
for
with
a
brush.
Christmas
It
gift.
didn't come with a brush. It just came with a strong, medium, uh, light tone or whatever it was, and it had the other paints, and some of them were absolutely garbage. The reds and the yellows were horrible.
Yeah,
Those were
yeah,
quickly replaced.
yeah.
But like the blues and the greens and stuff were pretty solid, and they were almost 1-to-1 matches for Citadel or for GW paints. Like the dark, I think they called it uh, dark angel green, absolute perfect 100% match for Caliban green, and that was I had dark angels as one of the miniatures that I was painting because I got that dark vengeance set. So
Plus
you
dropper
know,
bottles instead of paint pots, right? So
yes, off the bottom instead of paint pots. So that was painting. I pretty well jumped into decent stuff. Now I wouldn't say they're craft paints, maybe on par or maybe a little tiny bit better, but I have kind of always splurged on the paint.
yeah, I
So,
think every
the
painter.
golden horizon stuff or gilded horizon, whatever it is for Michaels, probably is a good bet. And plus, they have that 40% off coupon that you can apply.
Yeah, and
Um,
and and I've seen like other painters too, like so, they use the golden acrylic gouache media. Like I'm
yeah,
pronouncing it incorrectly, but it's like golden acrylic gouache or gouache. I'm not pronouncing it correctly, but it's like mega high pigment, mega high opacity, and it comes in these like kind of fat little jars,
hmm
and they're relatively the same price. You just get tons more paint, and it's really good. I've worked with a couple
yeah.
of their neon colors and their yellows
Ah,
because yellow is obviously a problem color most of the time.
yeah.
So
Yellow is typically a problem color. One of the two things that I do get from Michaels is the Liquitex line. I get the Flow Aid,
oh, nice, yeah.
um, and I get the Slow Dry medium from there. And I've used the matte medium, and I've actually when Brandon mentioned that about the generic iridescent, I've got an iridescent medium for Liquitex as well.
Oh, they make an iridescent medium?
Yes, they do.
His ears just
Sorry,
perked up.
I'm violently Amazoning right now.
You hear the
Very
you hear the
nice.
clack of Brandon's figures as he purchases every iridescent Liquitex paint that exists.
Well, I only know of the one that's kind of like a silver metallic iridescence, but they may have others. But if you actually look at the Jacob Lynch crew that I did, Kitty Dumont has that iridescence medium on her, so you can see it in action.
I literally just have that picture up. I'm going to it right now.
Nice.
Ooh.
That flow weight is really good, and it's, I think, at 40% off, it works out to like $6.95 a bottle.
Yeah, Michael's has this like weird 40% off coupon that you can get. So definitely.
And that bottle is 20 times larger because you have to dilute it by 1 to 20. So it's basically a gallon, pretty much, is what this bottle equates to. You buy this once. If you don't spill it, it's going to last you your entire painting career.
Yeah.
I feel like most of the Liquitex stuff is that way. I mean, all of their ink, acrylic inks are like just, there's so much of it.
Yeah.
It is definitely, there are definitely a couple of those products where if you go to like a Michael's or whatever and you buy it, you're just like, well, I now have this for literally the rest of my career. I'm thinking specifically of sepia oil, brown sepia oil paint that I use to make oil washes, and a giant tube of heavy body Liquitex white acrylic.
Yep.
I have enough heavy body white Liquitex acrylic paint to last multiple hobbyists' lifetimes from this just one tube I bought for like $7 at Michael's. Yeah. Okay. Well, so, you know, every artist has their bag of tricks or their can't live withouts. Do you have a couple tools that you find yourself using on a day-to-day basis that are just a really important part of your workflow? And, you know, what would those be?
For sure. Probably number one in my book is going to be a good brush. I have been through many different brushes, from Winsor Newton to Raphael. Mostly use Broken Toad now. They're an English company, which means the shipping is rough. So what I tend to do is I'll buy 10 brushes at a time, which hurts the wallet a bit, but you know, at least there's only one batch of shipping every year or so. And when I do commissions, I actually have a brush fee tacked on to the commissions because
it degrades
brushes have gotten so expensive now. And I use about a brush per commission. You know, it'll be wrecked pretty much by the time I'm done with it. So I just add a fee in to cover the replacement of the brush, and that's what we do.
What's your go-to size on a sizing on a brush? I like to work with like a size 2 or a size 3 or a size 4. I've always found, like, for me, my personal hobby journey, as I became better with brush control, I became more confident using a bigger ferrule or like, you know, like a bigger tip effectively. So I always used to think, oh my God, to do details, I need a size 1 or I need a size 2. And now that I've gotten a little bit more proficient, you know, over the course of like 12 years of painting, I feel comfortable using like a size 4 on most stuff. You know, for you, what's that like?
I use, because Broken Toad is so much larger than regular brushes, I tend to use the number 1 and a 3-0. And the 3-0 is probably comparable to a 0 in anyone else, and the size 1 is comparable to a 3 or 4 in most other brushes.
Yeah,
so
that makes sense. So your workhorse is like a 3-4.
Bellies on these brushes. They're big brushes.
Yeah. So your workhorse is like, you got like a detail guy, and then you got like a 3-4.
Yeah. And of course with Malifaux, you're using that 3-0 a lot because of such fine little details. Probably my next biggest tool is going to be the wet palette. Now I have used what I call a ghetto wet palette, which is just a Hillshire farm lunch meat container with paper towels and a piece of parchment on it, baking parchment. And that works great. Absolutely works great. You're going to spend about $1.50 on it total, and it's fine. But I did finally get in and buy the Everlasting Wet Palette 2 when they ran their Kickstarter, just to get an unbiased opinion on it, because so many people buy into hype and praise something that really. Yep, that's the one.
What did you think?
They'll praise it without, they praise it to praise it, and I critique the hell out of things. So I got it to try it and give an unbiased opinion on it, and I don't see any difference in performance between it and my cheap palette, but the paper really does last a long time. I've washed each piece of paper 8 to 10 times and could
Oh, that's
probably go a little bit further.
the
So
rehydrating wet palette paper that they're like you can reuse over and over again, basically.
reusable hydration paper, correct. It's really good. That paper is fantastic. Not having to cut the sheets of parchment, it
Yeah.
really does make, I mean, granted, I don't have to do it that often, but when I do, it's a time consuming process cutting all those little sheets of paper.
Yeah.
And I don't have to do that with this anymore. And like I said, these outlast the parchment by about 3 to 4 uses each. So for that reason alone, I like it.
Nice.
But is it worth going out spending $50 on? Your mileage may vary.
Yeah, I was gonna say, like, I have I think Brandon and I both use the same wet palette. We both use the Army Painter one. I
Mhm.
use it just because it's what we sell at our LGS, and also the form factor is really small.
Yeah.
And the one
Mhm.
thing I travel a lot with my hobby stuff. Like a lot of my hobbying, I actually do at the LGS because my LGS is like 10 minutes from my house. And at the end of the day, I just want to
Fantastic.
get out and paint. So having the
Nice.
portable one is nice for me. And I think
Yeah.
you're right though, dude. Like a wet palette is a wet palette is a wet palette is a wet palette.
Mhm.
At the end of the day, it's a wet sponge with
Mhm.
some cookie paper on it, uh,
Pretty much.
or like cookie paper equivalent, and it'll be pretty
Mhm.
much anything. You can put in whatever. But it is, I think, as you get into the later stages of your hobby journey, I think
Mhm.
having kind of like a nicer, more refined wet palette, at least for me, because like
Right.
the wet palette for me is a big deal in my painting process. Like it helps me smooth my paints. It helps keep them in good condition. Like for me, it's
Mhm.
probably one of the top things I use.
Yeah.
Obviously for you
Yeah.
as
I
well.
mean, obviously, it's a great tool, and especially in the summer months, and well, in the winter too, because you're running the fans in the summer and the air conditioning, which is it dehydrates it, it desiccates the air, and when you're running the heat in the winter, it basically does the same thing, which dries your paints out. So having the wet palette is really important just for that. Probably the other thing, my other number one tool of the three is going to be an airbrush. I
Yeah.
I collect them. I have 7 airbrushes.
You have 7 airbrushes?
Yeah.
Nice.
I've got 2 Iwatas. I have a HPCR, which is kind of like a workhorse, .50
Yeah, I have the HPCS.
needle.
I
Yeah,
have the
and I have a
HPCS Plus.
HPCS. Then I have a Badger 105 Patriot, a Badger.
I have
Uh,
3 Badger 105 Patriots. I love that airbrush. That is a
they are bulletproof. I
Yeah,
mean,
dude.
you can kind
Absolutely.
of almost throw them across the room and just pick it up and keep working. They're fantastic.
Yeah, they're great. I
Uh,
have one that I use for, like, enamels specifically because I don't super love mixing and matching enamel and acrylics through the same brush,
mhm.
and the brush that I use it for is a Badger because 'cause I'm like, "Hell, if I can break this thing, then it's impressive," you know? So
And what's the word for it? It is, oh, good Lord, I have forgotten it. The chrome, the, the chrome and one of the extreme. And I use the chrome the most because one, it has, you buy the retail pack, it comes with a point 0.5 and a point 0.19 or a point 0.21 needle. So it's basically 2 airbrushes in one, which I really like. So if you're on a budget, looking for an airbrush, the Chrome is a really good one because it's only a couple dollars more than the Patriot, and you've essentially got 2 brushes in one package. It has a really silky smooth trigger. All of mine have the extreme high roller trigger that came from the extreme airbrush. It's about a quarter inch taller, so it gives you a little bit more leverage on the trigger action. So you have more control. So that's an upgrade I would recommend if anybody gets Badger brushes, pick up that extreme high roller trigger.
now I have the most controversial question to ask you of any
Okay.
paintbrushery of all time. How do you handle thinning your paints? Do you mix your thin paints in the pot directly, or do you pull like an Angel Heraldez and mix them in like a little sprue and then pour it in? What's the deal? What's the deal? All the people want to know. What's the deal?
I do thin my paints. As far as like, there's no general recipe. It's a feel thing. Use the force Luke as best I can tell you. But I do mix directly in the pot. I put a couple drops of water or flow aid in the pot first, because if you drop undiluted paint in there, it goes forward into your nozzle when you start throwing the flow improver behind it. So I prefer to put the flow improver first. And then I'll give it a quick little stir with a long bristle brush, because if you use a regular brush, you can scratch the bowl with a ferrule and over time wear out that nickel coating.
Yeah, that's a really good tip. I think putting in the retardant medium, whatever you're using, like whatever it is, first, I think that's probably one of the most important tips, because you don't want to just be dropping thick paint into like the base of where your needle connects into your airbrush.
Right.
That's a guaranteed way to have a bad time,
Yep. The other thing I do once I've kind of given a decent little stir with the brush is then I'll pinch the tip of the airbrush and begin to spray like I'm putting paint down, and this backflows causes air to run back up into the cup and agitates what all is in there.
Yeah, the pinch mix, or that's what some of my friends call it.
Or the gangster gumbo, as one dude calls it. We know who we're talking about there, right?
Wild.
But yeah, I do that method. I mix directly in the cup, and it seems to work for me. The only time I might potentially not mix in the cup is if I'm using Averland Sunset. For some reason, dear God, it has the hugest hunks of pigment in it I've ever seen in my life. So I filter it first before I put it into my airbrush.
Or like if you tried to use like Corax White from GW, no one listening to this ever pick up Corax White from GW.
I'm pretty sure you're only supposed to put fluids in an airbrush, not like solid hunks of brick.
Exactly, not cottage cheese or whatever the hell they put in that thing.
To be honest, I think you'd have a better time trying to spray brush cottage cheese than you would Corax White.
Probably so.
Isn't it the same thing? I thought they were the same thing.
Yeah, except one's slightly better for you.
Yeah.
All right. So tell us what you got going on in terms of where folks can find you, kind of what you're up to on a weekly basis. I know you have different brand elements in different spots. So if people wanted to reach out to you, if they wanted to follow what you're doing, where can they find you?
Well, the first place you can find me on Facebook under Haunted Hobbies. So it's facebook.com/haunted hobbies. The other is on Instagram. Now that one is haunted_miniatures. I'm kind of in the process of rebranding, so you'll see that name switch back and forth a good bit. Also on Twitch at haunted_miniatures. I stream there usually Saturday and Sunday evenings, 8 p.m. Eastern. Although during the summer months, it's usually one night a week. Or one night a weekend, usually Saturday, because one day during the weekend I spend at the game store, and by the time I get done gaming there, I'm not in the mental space to be streaming.
Yeah. What games do you? What are your preferred games now? What are you playing?
Also, of course.
Oh man, wild,
crazy.
Yeah, right? Shocking.
I'm very surprised.
Very surprised. And I have been getting into Star Wars Legion, which
nice.
That is a really good one. It's very, very straightforward. There's not a whole lot of crunchiness to it, which I do enjoy if I want to just play a game without racking my brain.
One of the guys at our LGS, he's a mod on our channel, actually, Rich. Shout out to you, Mr. Richard. When he stopped playing about 2 years ago, he was one of the top 5 ranked Legion players in the world. And when we asked him about it, he literally says the exact same thing you just said. He's like, yeah, it's an okay game system. I like Malifaux better. Like literally, that's what he says every time.
Yeah, I mean, it is. I mean, it's a great system. It's just a low brain system. Like you can just kind of run on autopilot, pick up your meta list and run with it. Let's see here. What was the other thing? Oh, yes, I do stream for Wyrd on Twitch as well. I stream there at Play Wyrd on alternating Wednesdays, which tomorrow is my first day back. So 17th at 3 p.m. Eastern. So if you're interested in seeing me there, let's see here. That's the main places to reach me.
And also you hang out sometimes on our Discord. Folks
on your Discord, correct? Yep. There's that, and of course the Wyrd Discord and all that. So I'm pretty easy to find. And if you go to the Twitch channel or the Facebook channel, there's always links in there. I have a Willow link that takes you to all of them. So it's one-click shopping, basically, if you want to find me.
For all your haunted access needs.
For all your haunted access, there you go. Click the Willow link.
Perfect. So thank you for coming on. I mean, this was a really, really cool conversation for me to have. Like I told you when we were kind of prepping for this, I really love the artistic side of the hobby because I myself am really involved in art in my, my day job professional life. So thank you so much for coming on to talk to us and be the first one to do an artist spotlight. I mean, I hope you had fun. Sorry for making you talk to us. I mean, we're pretty caustic individuals, but it seemed like you made it through okay.
I made it through unscathed. It was great hanging with you guys. I appreciate the opportunity to talk a little bit about me and the hobby. That's what I enjoy doing.
Yeah, so keep
hobby,
it,
not so much talking about me.
Yeah. Fair enough. I don't think anybody loves like being on the spot talking about themselves for 30+ minutes, but you killed it, man. You did a great job.
Yeah.
So
I mean, at the very least, my life was changed. That Liquitex acrylic medium with the iridescence in it. Oh boy.
You can't see him haunted, but right now he has, while we were talking, gone to Michael's, purchased all of the Liquitex acrylic, and has covered himself in it. He is more Liquitex acrylic than man at this point.
Fantastic.
Wonderful, wonderful thing.
Yeah, I've already.
Hey, that makes me happy. I've changed lives, right?
Yeah.
I guarantee. No, but like no joke. He literally did. He's going to go purchase all of that.
Literally tomorrow. Literally as soon as they open. If they weren't already closed, I would have been like, sorry guys, I gotta bounce.
Well, guys, thanks for joining us for our very first artist spotlight featuring Haunted. I hope you guys learned as much as I did by having a conversation about where he came from an artistic perspective, what he likes to do, the hobby supplies he uses on a regular basis, and the stuff he gets up to on his various social media channels. And we're going to be doing this on a consistent basis where we pick particular artists and showcase their work from around the different communities of the games that we play. So if you guys have suggestions for other artists that you're really into or different artists that you really like, let us know. And we'd be happy to try to spin something up like this with them as well. Thanks again, guys. Keep a tab on the channel. We got a lot of stuff coming. So see you next time on the planet.